of you know, my grandparents actually immigrated. My dad's mom and dad came here from Sicily. DiBernardo is my maiden name, which if you're friends with me on Facebook, you've seen that long name that no one can ever spell. Yeah, lots of vowels. But DiBernardo was my maiden name. And my grandparents came from Catania, a region in Sicily, and landed in the south side of Chicago, which is where I'm hearing from my friends who have roots in Chicago, whether they're German, Norwegian, Swedish. A lot of immigrants landed there and they found work in the steel mills. And that's what my grandpa did. He'd take a bus to Gary, Indiana, actually, and work in the steel mills. But my dad, who's 84, grew up at a really interesting time on the south side of Chicago. I met my mother there, and they had an interesting story, which is relevant to this conversation only in that there's quite a few years between them. And my mom was 14 when they met. I'll have to give a shout out to my mom. She usually counts how many times I mention her name in anything I do live. But this is interesting because she actually went to live with them for a while to learn how to cook for my dad. Super traditional family. So needless to say, we are Sicilian. I wouldn't say Italian because my dad would correct you. We are Sicilian, but food has always been the center of our universe. And it's certainly the kitchen is a place where I feel so at home and a bit fearless, truthfully. It's definitely a happy place for me. It's what we talk about. It's what my sister and my mom and I talk about. Every Sunday we do Sunday dinner. We've had to do Zoom meeting Sunday dinners of late, which we're all kind of over. We're starting to do them outside now at bonfires, but every Sunday, this is what we would do. And so one of our faves is something we call, regatta gnocchi. And the traditional gnocchi, if you've had it, it can be pretty heavy. It's because it's potatoes. So first of all, it's heavy because it's potatoes. It is delicious. But second of all, you got to mash potatoes, which is a whole other layer that, a lot of us don't have time for. So I'm going to share with you today a really quick and easy. I mean, once you make your own gnocchi, you may not ever buy it again. Certainly once you taste it again, it's going to be hard to compete. I'll just tell you that much. Doesn't take a whole lot of ingredients, by the way. I'm just going to tilt this down a little bit so you can see just what we're working with. Not a whole lot here. I mean, not a lot of ingredients. I've got eggs, flour, I've got ricotta, Parmesan, olive oil, and salt. Not a whole lot. Pro tip, as the kids say, I buy whole milk ricotta, and you can see it actually drains a little bit. If I think about it, I'll put this in the refrigerator to drain the night before I'm going to make this. If I think about it, not exactly a deal breaker if you don't do that. But what it does is you don't have to use as much flour to get your dough together. Okay, so let's get started because I want to keep everybody tight. Believe it or not, you can make this whole recipe in 30 minutes, which I'm going to go ahead and get my pot of water going because you'll be able to see just how quick and easy this comes together. Okay, so we're going to take our ricotta, which I've already measured out, put that in here. It wasn't very appetizing sound, was it? I've already measured out my Parmesan too. That's 2 cups of ricotta cheese. I've already measured out my ½ cup of grated Parm. And you can cheat a little bit here, but I'll just always say, the trick to any awesome dish is really the quality of the ingredients. So you're going to use cheap Parm. You might not notice the difference when you use cheap Parm, but I tell you, you'll notice the difference when you use good Parm and grate it yourself. But again, in a hurry, not a deal breaker. I'm going to add the olive oil next, which it's only, and I'll post this, by the way, I'll post this recipe on the chat here so you can have it, but we're going to need 1½ tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And this is, again, why I like cooking versus baking. Not quite as precise. You'll notice I didn't really measure that ½ tablespoon. I get in trouble when I start baking. I've decided there are way too many rules to baking. It's not like you can riff when you're baking. I've already taken my eggs out and cracked them. I always like to kind of crack them. I've learned the hard way that when I crack them directly into the bowl, I find myself fishing out the eggshells, which again, pro tip, if that happens, take the shell to pick up the shell. The shell is attracted to shell. I learned that. Again, out of necessity, of course. Small world, Bobby, your grandmother went to live with her grandfather's sisters to learn how to cook for him before they were married. So interesting. Back in the day. And then we're going to need a little bit of salt, of course. Got to have a little bit of salt. And this is actually just a pinch, a teaspoon, which again, I don't measure a whole lot. And in terms of tools, these are all the tools you're gonna need. Not much. You know, a spatula, a whisk, and then we've got some gnocchi tools, which I'll share with you as soon as we get to that point. But for this part, we're just gonna whisk all this together. Well, you can really tell too that I, first of all, used whole milk regatta because it's definitely more dense, and you can definitely tell that I drained it because it does feel quite a bit drier. You can see that little bit of liquid we got, you know, that would have been in this, which is, again, not a deal breaker, but the more you make this stuff, those of you who have your favorite recipes, you know how you can notice just even the smallest changes. So I'm just gonna get this just mixed. I'm not gonna overmix. Again, doesn't take a ton of time to do. Now we're gonna add the flour, which again, I've already measured out. The flour for this is about 1 1/4 cups, and you're always gonna want a little bit more for dusting too. When we roll out the gnocchi rods, you'll need some more. But I'm gonna add this in 3 parts. And this is for my baker friends out there. One of the tricks to this, keeping it so light, is that we don't overmix. You know, you almost wanna just fold the flour in. You know, it's a little bit like baking, and the less that you work with it, the more fluffy and light it's going to be. And I'll show you what this looks like when we're done. That's the first part. So I'm gonna, again, take my second third here and just lightly fold this in. It's not like any other, you know, pasta dough too, by the way. Those of you who've made homemade pasta know that can get really, really firm, super strong. You know, not very elastic. It can get tough. This is actually a pretty doughy, a pretty kind of a wet dough. Okay, so I continue to fold this in. You can see how it's coming together there. It's not like a typical dough. It's definitely wetter. It's not like a bread dough. You don't expect it to all come together, but you don't want to completely manhandle it either. And I'm actually, you can see I don't have every piece of flour mixed in there, but I like the consistency of this already. I like that. You can see how that is. It's almost like maybe even closer to a cookie dough. Okay, so we've got that in there. You can't be afraid, by the way, you can't be afraid of getting your hands dirty. As we often say, the cook's best tools are clean hands, and certainly no more true than this season of COVID that we're living through. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of flour, clean up a little bit over here. A little bit of flour, and I'm gonna dust my nice cold workspace here. Okay, and for this, you know, we're gonna turn this all out. We're gonna turn this all out onto this flour. And again, we're gonna be super light with it. See how I'm not even really touching it? I just want it to get coated with the flour so it doesn't stick, but I don't want to overwork it. I don't want to work with it like crazy because I want to make sure that it stays nice and light and airy when we get our pasta rolled out. Okay, let me see who else is here on the call. Hey Chris, congratulations. Mount Mercy graduate, big weekend for you. I'm so proud of you. I know you've been working on that. Way to go. This would be a great celebration dinner, although we need Paul to be here on the Facebook Live because he should be making this for you, right? Okay, so we've got this. You can see it's here. This is what it looks like. Again, we don't want to I'll stick my finger in here. You can see how it doesn't come back. It's probably more like a cookie dough. So we're gonna go ahead and take a little bit of this out. Just take a little bit like this. I'm gonna put some more flour down because this is where we're gonna actually do the work. Okay, so we're gonna roll out, go back to your Play-Doh days. We're gonna roll out really lightly a rod here. They say about, you know, I don't know, 5/8 inch in diameter. You can see why you want the flour here. But you could, the more dough you take, the longer your little dowel will be, but we don't need it to be that. So now you're starting to see, this is about the width of your gnocchi. This is what it would look like typically. Okay, I need to grab a knife so you can see what this looks like. We're gonna just start on the end, and I like to just, this is the size, you make these as big as you want your gnocchi to be. And for those of us who have, you know, grandparents who were awesome at like chicken and dumplings, think dumplings. I think almost every ethnicity has some version of a noodle, but that is literally how easy it is. I mean, if you wanted to completely be done with it, you literally could just put these in the pot of boiling water. But we're gonna use our gnocchi board, which is about $5, and I think you can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond. And you just take it and you roll down the gnocchi board. You can see you get these little indentations. Roll it down the gnocchi board. And this is a fun thing you can do with your kids too. You press a little bit to get the indent. You see that? Now, for those of us who don't have gnocchi boards and want to make this tonight, take a fork. Take the back of a fork and roll it down the fork. And you get a little bit wider groove, but nonetheless, you're going to accomplish the same thing. You're going to be able to, your sauce is going to stick to your gnocchi. And I see some of my team members on the call. We did this on one of our Fun Friday calls, and you should have seen the meals that came out of the gnocchi. I'm gonna go back to my board just because I think the board is easier, but, and I've also already prepared a floured sheet with parchment paper, wax paper. This is how you'll keep it. Again, you can see how you can riff with this. You can make smaller, you can make larger, you can do bigger grooves, you can do no grooves at all. But like I said, I just like it because I get my sauce will actually stick to the noodle way better. And then we'll take this over to our boiling pot of water. And honestly, you can see it really takes, and you'd be shocked how good you can get at this and how fast you can be with this for dinner. And like the kids, super fun activity for kids too. Think Play-Doh, although I will say it is definitely softer than Play-Doh. Okay, so now I'm gonna spin you around a little bit here. Our water is definitely going. Make sure you can see the hot water. You need to salt the water so it's like the sea. It really does add flavor. And then we're gonna drop these in. Literally just drop them lightly into the boiling water. Don't splash yourself. Although my cook friends all have nice little scars that they wear as a badge of honor. I'm not sure it's a badge of honor, but and then you're gonna know that it's cooked because the gnocchi is gonna rise to the top. It'll all come to the top here, and I'll show you that here in a minute too. One of the things about when you go to a restaurant for gnocchi, you will see it sometimes with a red sauce, but a lot of times you'll see it with like a brown butter sage, which is really interesting with something like this because it is, I think with potato gnocchi, the butter makes it just such a heavy dish. But with the regatta gnocchi, I prefer it with a red sauce. So whatever, you can make your own marinara. Certainly there are ways to cheat. There's something called passata. Let me see if let me show you one of the jars here. It's a great cheat for me. I actually purchased, I've got a couple of favorites when I want to cheat with a sauce. That Gustara from Hy-Vee, love it, super fresh. Or Rouse, love Rouse. And both of these have, when you look at the ingredients, just less sugar than say the really delicious Pregos of the world and the Chef Boyardees. They do have a lot of sugar in them. So I went ahead and got some of my red sauce going. I will also say, oh, look, take a look at our gnocchi. We don't want to overcook it. See it? You see how it's all coming to the top? That means it's done. See how quick that was? Like, uber easy. Uber easy. I will say gnocchi is oftentimes used as a starter. Look at that. Light, super light. It's a starter because it can be pretty heavy. So you would use it if you were going to have, of course, in my family, you'd have beef or veal, my mom's favorite, pork. But we would do that as a starter. You might just have a couple of that, a couple of bites of that, and that is plenty. It can be very rich. You always want to toss it in the sauce, by the way. That's another little pro tip. Get your sauce in your saute pan, and then you can put your pasta in there. I'm gonna get some parm, which I should have had out earlier, but I didn't. Again, you gotta have the fresh parm. And our friends at Hy-Vee always have good parm. You know it's parm when it actually says on the rind, by the way. You wanna make sure that it says that. And there we have it. There is the most delicious, quick and easy ricotta gnocchi. Now, if I was really fancy, I'd have some basil and I'd put it in a nice white dish and sprinkle it with some chopped basil. But, you know, I think you get the idea. Something like, you know, gnocchi, I've had friends use it for dinner parties. You know, they're having people over for dinner and it's kind of like kind of make your own, sing for your supper, make your own supper. Okay, let me see who else is on here. Hello, Sharon, Jess Haraney, thanks for being here. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I put this recipe on the links. I'll also share with you a really good marinara recipe too, if you're looking to make your own, which, you know what, we actually do that more often than not in our house, just because when we make it, I tend to make a lot. I don't do the old suaga, like if my grandma was making real red sauce, she would use pork neck bones. Pork neck bones are where the real flavor comes from, which is not surprising. It's a really cheap, meat with tons of flavor, and that would cook for hours on the stove. When I make my red sauce, I literally, in just about everything I make, soups, sauces, everything, I've got a couple, I always have a carrot, I always have celery, and I always have an onion. I think in French they'd call it a mirepoix. It's just basically those three things, small, diced up and sauteed in olive oil and salt and pepper, and that flavors just about everything I do. Another pro tip I'm going to tell you about, because it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference in your sauce. You can get these. I have found it at the Hy-Vee on 32nd Street, and I found it at Walmart. San Marzano tomatoes. San Marzano is a region in Italy. And when you go to restaurants, if you wonder why the sauce is so good, odds are it was made with San Marzano tomatoes. They're so sweet. I think it's the volcanic ash, they say, that they are grown in. They're super sweet, and they make, I mean, I can literally open this can and just put it in pasta. Yes, I am Italian and I eat pasta once a day. However, I can be fairly objective. And if you're going to be making sauce that matters, again, it all goes back to the ingredients. You can't skimp on ingredients, fresh ingredients. If you want something to be really good, you got to invest in the right stuff. And tools as well. You know, I always have a sharp knife in the kitchen. I actually sharpen my knives before I use them. I'll show you a little. You can actually use a couple of, you've probably seen them in the store a couple different ways, but it's no fun to cook if you don't have the right tools. It's what makes it so much fun. So I sharpen my knives either with, you've got these, you've seen these. They usually come with any knife set you get, or kind of a lazy one. This came when one of my daughter's friends from high school started selling those Cutco knives. I have a set of Cutco. Anybody have Cutco knives? Yeah. $1 million knives that are, however, fabulous. But this came with it, and this is literally how you sharpen this. So before I cut anything, I sharpen my knives, and I'll tell you, it will make cooking a pleasure. Nobody likes dull knives. So, you know, invest in some good tools. Make it a family affair. Yeah, and you too can be Sicilian, just that quick. I'll keep rolling these out. I did see a really interesting modification for this cauliflower gnocchi. And I know if you've been to Trader Joe's, I'll show you, I bought some just to try it out. It is actually delicious. Cauliflower gnocchi, and it is actually delicious. A lot heavier than the ricotta gnocchi though. Again, that ricotta gnocchi is so light. A lot heavier, but it is cauliflower. The last time I made gnocchi too, I froze it, and this is what it looks like. So note to self, if you're making a gnocchi, go ahead and get it on that pan with lots of flour. Let it sit for a little bit to kind of completely dry out, but keep it separate. And then go ahead and put it in a Ziploc bag. And I laid mine flat. I wasn't like completely, obsessed with making sure it was flat and none of the noodles were on top of each other. And this is how they turned out. So that's what I'll do with the rest of this, because we might have some of these gnocchi tonight for dinner, but we certainly don't need all of them now that there's just the three of us here at home. So here, I'll show you one more time how we roll it on the gnocchi board. You can see the more ridges you're going to have, obviously, the more the sauce is going to stick. I would say top to bottom, this is easily a 30-minute recipe. I happen to have my ingredients all ready for you, so it really didn't take that long. But honestly, top to bottom, if you were to do that, same kind of deal, I would say 30 minutes, top to bottom. I'm not talking about the cleanup. It's one thing about cooking. If you cut a deal with the people who are enjoying your gnocchi, that they're going to do the cleanup, that's the way to do it. So let me just see if there are any questions. Oh, Kenzie, one of my team members, said she tried it, highly recommend. I mean, all levels, this is really something for all levels. What makes it different is the ricotta, and if you really want to amp it up too, lemon zest. I forgot to put that in my dough, but that, we always have lemons in our house too. Brightens everything up. The ricotta keeps it nice and light, so it doesn't have to be completely brightened up, but I like what lemon adds to just about everything. So again, when you're talking about tools, you're gonna want a zester. Different than a microplane. Like the microplane is what I use to grate the parm. And again, this is stuff you can get at Bed Bath. They might even have it at True Value. I don't know. I've found interesting gadgets, but you can see the difference between the microplane. It's definitely thicker. And the grate is bigger and deeper. The zester, very fine. It's very fine, and it's great for fruit. And you just want to, when you're zesting anything too, and again, this is really delicious if you mix it in with your gnocchi dough. You always want to just make sure that you are getting just the outside. You don't need the white pithy part. And this is how it looks. Super flavorful. I wish you could smell it. All that oil comes out. And there you have it. There you have it. That's ricotta gnocchi from the O'Donnell, I should say DiBernardo O'Donnell kitchen. And I will hang around here. Oh, good, Jess, you and Betty are gonna try making it? She's gonna love it. She is quite the chef, it looks like. So Betty's gonna have a ball with this, and Joe gets to be the benefactor. Nice, say hello to Joe for me. I'll go ahead, Target on Blairsbury has that brand too, of the tomatoes. Charity, that's awesome. These are, this is what you want to look for. You definitely want to look for San Marzano, product of Italy. It's worth it. It is definitely worth it. My brother actually lives in Chicago, lives downtown, and we call him our tomato mule because there's a grocery store called Bari, and they'll get a case ready for him. So my sister and mom and I each get a case when he comes home, and it's significantly cheaper, obviously, when you buy it by the case. So if you're ever in a pinch, I'll show you one other thing. I could talk for hours. Can you tell about this kind of stuff? This was something I discovered from my good friend, wink, wink, Giada De Laurentiis. She made pasta with roasted cherry San Marzanos. And you want to talk candy? Holy smokes. Dump that in a pan with a little bit of garlic and olive oil. Delish. But again, from the San Marzano region, so you get the really, really sweet flavor of those tomatoes. I think that's about all I can share with you about the ricotta gnocchi. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Send me a pic. If you make this at any point in time, send me a pic, and we'll share it with our friends to see how great it looked, because I think you will that'll be our secret that we make